deep beneath the bustling streets of Vienna, where the ghosts of empires whisper through ancient stone, lies a place of eternal rest for one of Europe's most powerful dynasties. It is a chamber steeped in shadows and secrets, the Imperial Crypt of the Capuchin Church, the final destination for over 150 Habsburg royals. Imagine stepping into that cool, silent space, surrounded by elaborate sarcophags, lived with unimaginable power, privilege, and often profound tragedy. But among the gleaming bronze and dark lead, past the majestic effigies and solemn inscriptions, there are items that simply defy explanation. Objects that snag at your mind, whispering stories not found in history books, but hinted at in the cold, unyielding metal. Some of these things are so peculiar, so out of place, they make you wonder what forgotten rituals or private eccentricities were buried alongside the emperors and empresses. Get ready to peel back the layers of dust in time, because what you are about to discover are the 10 strangest things hidden in the Habsburg Imperial Crypt, each one the chilling, captivating piece of a puzzle we may never fully solve. Number 10. The golden urn of Empress Maria Theresa's heart. The very air within the crypt seems to shift when you approach the twin sarcophagi of Empress Maria Theresa and her husband, Emperor Francis I Stephen. They lie side by side, a colossal double tomb, crafted from gleaming bronze, so grand it dominates the entire Kaisergrift, the Emperor's vault. Maria Theresa, a woman of formidable will and unwavering determination, was unlike any ruler before or since. She ascended to the throne in 1740, a young woman facing a continent ready to tear her inheritance apart. Her early years were a constant battle, not just against invading armies, but against the skepticism of a male-dominated world that doubted a woman could effectively govern. Yet she did. She reformed the military, modernized the education system, and even founded the famous Schönbrunn Palace Zoo. She was a mother to 16 children, many of whom became rulers or consorts across Europe, connecting her bloodline to nearly every major royal house. Think of the endless state dinners, the demanding diplomatic dances, the quiet moments stolen with her children, or the crushing weight of public expectation that she carried for 4 decades. Her days were a relentless cycle of governance, family, and prayer. Now imagine this woman so grand in life, so powerful in death, and then notice the peculiar detail. Her massive sarcophagus alongside her husband's is empty of a crucial part of her being. Her heart is not there. Instead, tucked away in the Loreto Chapel, a separate part of the crypt, rests a smaller, less imposing object. It is a golden urn, not as large as a coffee pot, but exquisitely crafted, reflecting a soft, warm light, even in the dimness. Its surface is adorned with delicate engravings, swirling patterns that might depict vines or tendrils, almost as if growth could still emerge from within. The metal gleams with the kind of luster only gold can possess, a deep, rich yellow that speaks of immense value and importance. It sits on a simple pedestal, unassuming yet radiating a strange energy. This urn holds the mummified heart of Maria Theresa. The tradition of separating the heart and intestines from the body was a peculiar Habsburg custom, stemming from a belief in preserving the body in different consecrated locations for different spiritual purposes. The body for the crypt, the heart for a church, the intestines for another. For Maria Theresa, whose physical presence was so imposing, whose every gesture commanded attention to half her very core, her emotional engine, separated and enshrined in such a discreet vessel, feels deeply unsettling. Was it a final act of humility, separating emotional from the regal? Or was it an ultimate expression of her devotion, her heart dedicated to a specific holy place, independent of her earthly remains? Her heart, the organ that beat through countless crises, through the joy of new births and the sorrow of losing beloved children, through the strain of governing an empire, now rests alone. In gold, Taman, The sheer contrast between her enormous public persona and this small, intensely private vessel makes you wonder about the true weight of her heart and the reasons it was destined for such a unique, solitary resting place. Number 9. The gilded sarcophagus of Emperor Francis I Stephen's intestines, while Maria Theresa's heart lies in its golden vessel. Her husband, Emperor Francis I Stephen, experienced an even more extreme form of bodily division in death. Francis was not born into the imperial spotlight of Vienna. He was a Duke of Lorraine, a charming and rather intelligent man who found himself marrying into one of Europe's most formidable families. He was, by all accounts, a devoted husband to Maria Theresa, though his role in government was often overshadowed by her powerful personality. He indulged in scientific pursuits, founding the first botanical garden in Vienna and having a keen interest in natural history. He also had a passion for finance, and through clever investments significantly increased the family's private fortune, a rather practical skill for an emperor's consort. He was known for his calm demeanor, his love for practical jokes, and his unwavering support for his empress, even if it meant stepping back from the limelight. Their marriage, despite the political pressures and the birth of so many children, was genuinely affectionate, filled with respect and companionship. He was her steady rock, her confidant, and perhaps her greatest love. His sarcophagus in the main crypt, next to Maria Theresa's, is grand and imposing, a monument befitting an emperor, yet, like his empress, his physical being was split apart. His intestines, the very essence of his inner workings, the organs that processed his meals and perhaps his anxieties, were removed after his death in 1765. They were not placed in a simple practical container. Instead, they reside in an astonishingly ornate gilded sarcophagus in the Herzgruft, or Heart Crypt, a separate room within the crypt complex. This is not a small urn. It is a miniature coffin, crafted from lustrous bronze, its surface entirely covered in intricate gold leaf. It gleams with an almost blinding intensity in the dim light of its chamber, standing out starkly against the dark stone walls. The craftsmanship is exquisite, with detailed bas-reliefs and elegant scroll work adorning every inch. It looks like a jewel box, or perhaps a reliquary for a saint. Not a container for something so profoundly biological and frankly gruesome. The decision to enclose these particular organs in such a magnificent, luxurious casing speaks volumes. Was it a testament to his practical nature, ensuring all parts of him were accounted for and treated with the utmost respect? Or was there a deeper symbolic meaning to enshrining his digestive system with such pomp and circumstance? It feels profoundly odd, almost grotesque in its opulence. The idea that something so mundane, so internal, would be given such a grand public display of wealth and artistry, while his main body lies in a more subdued, albeit still regal, lead sarcophagus, is genuinely puzzling. It forces you to confront the strange intersection of extreme wealth, religious belief, and the very raw realities of human physiology in a way that is utterly unique to the Habsburgs. His life was one of quiet influence and solid support, and perhaps this gilded vessel is a reflection of the hidden, precious work he did behind the scenes for his family and his empire, a golden tribute to the parts of him the world never saw. Number 8. Archduchess Maria Anna's unfinished coffin. The crypt holds many children, many young lives extinguished too soon. A poignant reminder of the harsh realities of royal life and 18th century medicine. One such figure is Archduchess Maria Anna, the second daughter of Empress Maria Theresa and Emperor Francis I Stephen. Born in 1718, just before her mother ascended to the throne, Maria Anna's early life was marked by her fragile health. She was not as robust as her younger siblings, and from an early age it was clear she was afflicted with a spinal deformity, likely kyphosis, which greatly impacted her physical development and left her with a curved spine. Despite this, she was described as intelligent, deeply pious, and remarkably resilient. She found solace in intellectual pursuits and charitable work, a stark contrast to her vibrant, politically astute mother and her many siblings who would go on to rule kingdoms. Maria Anna was a quiet presence in the boisterous imperial court, often in the shadow of her more famously beautiful and ambitious sisters like Maria Christina and Maria Antonia, who would become Marie Antoinette of France. She had a gentle spirit, a kind heart, and a quiet determination to live a meaningful life, despite her physical limitations. Her coffin, nestled among the other royal children, carries an air of profound sadness and an unsettling sense of incompletion. It is a lead sarcophagus, heavy and dark, but unlike many of the others which are adorned with a multitude of symbols, coats of arms, and elaborate Latin inscriptions detailing the deceased's full titles and virtues. Maria Anna's coffin seems strangely sparse. Upon closer inspection, you notice something truly peculiar. Sections of the decorative metalwork appear to be missing. There are indentations where elaborate escutcheons should be, outlines where intricate floral patterns or heraldic emblems were clearly intended to be affixed, but they are simply not there. It is as if the craftsman started the work, meticulously outlining the design, perhaps even preparing the individual pieces, but then suddenly stopped, leaving the coffin permanently in a state of partial completion. This isn't just about erosion or damage over centuries. It looks like the work was interrupted abruptly, never to be resumed. Was it a rush to bury her because of a sudden, unexpected death? She lived to be 38 years old, which was a relatively long life for someone with her health issues. In that era, it wasn't a sudden childhood. Death. So why the unfinished state? Perhaps it speaks to the unexpected nature of her passing even at that age, leaving the court unprepared for the intricacies of her final resting place. Or perhaps it reflects something deeper about her life, a life always defined by her delicate health, by the things she could not fully participate in, by a sense of unfulfilled potential. Did the unfinished coffin symbolize a life that, despite her best efforts and quiet strength, felt incomplete to those who mourned her? It sits there, a raw, poignant monument to a gentle soul, a physical manifestation of dreams that perhaps never quite reached their full expression, leaving an eerie silence where ornate details should have been a forever unfinished canvas in the heart of the Imperial Crypt. Number 7. The lead sarcophagus of Archduke Leopold Johann with the adult low royal scepter. The Imperial Crypt holds a large number of infants and young children, a stark and often heartbreaking testament to the high mortality rates of past centuries, even for those born into the highest echelons of society. Among these tiny tombs is that of Archduke Leopold Johann, a son of Emperor Leopold I and Empress Margaret Theresa. Born in 1670, he was a child of immense hope for the Habsburg dynasty, representing the continuation of their powerful line. His arrival was celebrated as all imperial births were, with elaborate ceremonies and declarations signifying the future of an empire resting on his tiny shoulders. But like so many royal infants, his life was tragically short. He lived for only 6 months, dying in November of the same year he was born. His death, though devastating to his parents, was a common occurrence, yet it brought immense sadness and uncertainty to the succession. His coffin is a small lead sarcophagus, simple in its design, proportional to the size of an infant. It speaks of the briefness of his existence. A small vessel for a life barely begun. However, resting prominently on top of his tiny coffin laid out for all visitors to observe is an object that completely defies logic and proportion. A full-sized, elaborately crafted royal scepter. This is not a miniature toy scepter nor a symbolic trinket. This is an imposing, adult-sized scepter, typically wielded by a reigning monarch during coronations or state ceremonies. Its head is intricately worked, perhaps gilded or adorned with imitation jewels, and its shaft is long and substantial, stretching well beyond the length of the infant's small coffin. It looks heavy, powerful and utterly out of place. Why would such a potent symbol of imperial authority, a tool of adult power and governance, be placed upon the tomb of a 6-month-old baby? It is profoundly unsettling. Was it a desperate act of wishful thinking from his grieving parents, projecting the future he would never inherit onto his tiny grave? Did they place it there as a solemn promise, a symbolic anointing of a child who was meant to carry the weight of an empire, even though he never had the chance? Or was it a cruel reminder of what was lost, a tangible representation of the dynasty's dashed hopes? The scepter, heavy with the symbolism of a lifetime of rule, dwarfs the small coffin, highlighting the tragic brevity of Leopold Johann's life. It feels like an immense burden placed upon an innocent sleeping child. The image is striking. The fragile vulnerability of infancy, contrasted with the overwhelming weight of imperial destiny. It leaves you with a lingering sense of melancholy and questions about the desperate lengths parents, and indeed a dynasty, would go to in order to ensure the continuation of their line, even in the face of inevitable, heartbreaking loss. Number 6. The unusually simple coffin of Emperor Leopold I. Walking through the Kaiser Crypt, one is often struck by the sheer opulence and grandeur of the sarcophagi. They are masterworks of bronze and lead, adorned with elaborate carvings, effigies of emperors and empresses in their finest robes, surrounded by allegorical figures, angels, and symbols of power and piety. These are not merely coffins, they are statements, declarations of a lifetime of rule and divine right. Then you arrive at the resting place of Emperor Leopold I. Born in 1640, Leopold was never initially destined for the imperial throne. He was meant for a life in the church, educated for a religious path, until the unexpected death of his elder brother Ferdinand IV pushed him into the line of succession. He ascended in 1658 and ruled for an astonishing 47 years, a reign marked by constant warfare against the Ottoman Empire, France, and various European powers. He presided over a period of immense challenge and change, facing down numerous threats to his empire. Despite the grand nature of his rule, Leopold himself was known for his deeply religious nature, his love of music and the arts, and a certain personal austerity. He was not a flamboyant ruler. His piety often bordered on asceticism, and he was known to spend hours in prayer and contemplation. He was a scholarly man, perhaps more comfortable with books and compositions than with the cutthroat world of international diplomacy and military strategy. Given the typical Habsburg penchant for extravagant displays, Leopold I's sarcophagus stands out precisely because of its remarkable plainness. It is a massive lead coffin, certainly substantial and durable, but utterly devoid of the usual ornamentation. There are no gilded flourishes, no intricate relief carvings of battles or virtues, no grand effigy of the emperor himself. Its surface is smooth, almost stark, interrupted only by a simple inscription detailing his name and dates, and perhaps a rudimentary cross. Compared to the breathtaking artistic endeavors surrounding the tombs of his predecessors and successors, Leopold I's coffin is strikingly, almost shockingly, menaced. It almost looks like a utilitarian vessel rather than the final resting place of one of Europe's longest reigning and most powerful emperors. Why this stark contrast? Was it a reflection of his deep personal piety, a final rejection of earthly vanity in favor of spiritual humility? Did he explicitly request such a simple burial, desiring to be remembered for his faith rather than his imperial pomp? Or was there another reason, perhaps a statement about the impermanence of power or the ultimate equality of all before God? A message delivered silently through the very material and form of his tomb? It feels almost like an anomaly in this crypt of magnificent art and overwhelming grandeur. The plain lead of his coffin seems to absorb the light rather than reflect it, creating an unusual pocket of solemn quiet amidst the more flamboyant displays. It forces you to consider the man behind the title, his personal beliefs, and the possibility that even an emperor might seek a humble peace in his final sleep, choosing a path less traveled, even in death. Number 5. the ornate iron grille around Archduchess Maria Josepha's sarcophagus. The Habsburg Imperial Crypt is known for its impressive and often imposing sarcophagi. Many are crafted from lead or bronze, occasionally adorned with allegorical figures, coats of arms, and detailed inscriptions. But one particular sarcophagus, that of Archduchess Maria Theresa, daughter of Empress Maria Theresa and Emperor Francis I Stephen, stands out due to an unusual and somewhat alarming feature. It is encased behind a heavy wrought iron grille. Maria Josepha was born in 1751, the 12th child of the formidable Empress Maria Theresa. She was a quiet girl, known for her gentle disposition and her artistic talents, particularly in painting. She lived a relatively sheltered life within the Schönbrunn Palace, growing up in the shadow of her more politically prominent siblings. Her life, like so many royal princesses, was largely dictated by dynastic marriages. In 1767, at the age of 16, she was betrothed to King Ferdinand IV of Naples and Sicily, a union intended to strengthen the Habsburg influence in Italy. It was a common fate for princesses of the time to be used as political pawns in the grand chessboard of European power. Maria Josepha was preparing for her journey to Naples, a journey that would take her far from her family and home, when tragedy struck. A smallpox epidemic was sweeping through Vienna, a deadly disease that claimed countless lives regardless of social status. Maria Josepha was scheduled to visit the Imperial Crypt to pray for her future journey and to pay her respects to the recently deceased Empress Maria Josepha of Bavaria, her mother's sister-in-law, who had also died of smallpox. It was a tradition for brides to visit the crypt before leaving for their new homes. Despite warnings and concerns from her mother about the contagious nature of the disease, Maria Josepha, out of piety and perhaps a sense of duty, went within days of her visit. She fell ill with smallpox. She died quickly just before she was due to depart for her wedding. Her death was a great shock and a profound sorrow for the imperial family. A young life abruptly ended on the cusp of a new chapter. Her sarcophagus is a substantial lead coffin, bearing the usual Habsburg imperial symbols. But what truly captures the eye is the robust iron grille that completely encloses it. This is not a decorative fence around a family plot. It is a heavy cage-like structure, securely bolted to the crypt floor and ceiling, completely enveloping her coffin. The bars are thick and dark, suggesting strength and containment rather than mere aesthetic appeal. It gives the impression that her sarcophagus is being held in quarantine, or perhaps even imprisoned. No other sarcophagus in the crypt, no matter how important the deceased, possesses such a formidable barrier. Why was Maria Josepha's coffin singled out for such an unusual and protective enclosure? The most common explanation ties back to the circumstances of her death. She died of a highly contagious disease. Was the grille meant to signify a continued spiritual quarantine? A symbolic barrier against the spread of her illness, even in death? Or perhaps it was an act of profound grief and protectiveness from her mother, Empress Maria Theresa, a desperate final attempt to shield her beloved daughter from any further harm, even from the ravages of time or the curious gazes of future. The grille itself is simple in design, practical rather than elaborate, which only adds to its unsettling nature. It speaks of a specific lingering fear or an urgent need for separation. It stands as a stark visual reminder of a life cut short by a terrifying disease, and the lengths to which a grieving family bound by unusual traditions might go to memorialize a young woman whose destiny was tragically altered by an invisible yet devastating foe. Number 4. The coffin of Archduke Rudolf, son of Leopold I, with a single loose child's shoe resting on top. The crypt is filled with the echoes of lives long and short, powerful and fragile. Among the smaller coffins, resting quietly in the dim light of the Maria Theresan vault, is that of Archduke Rudolf, a young son of Emperor Leopold I and Empress Eleanor Magdalene. Born in 1678, Rudolf was another in a long line of potential heirs. A boy whose life, like so many of his siblings, was tragically brief. He lived for barely 3 years, dying in 1680. His early death, while heartbreaking for his parents, was not uncommon in an era where childhood diseases often claimed royal lives as easily as those of commoners. He was one of many children who never had the chance to grow up, to leave a mark on the world beyond their brief, hopeful existence. His small lead sarcophagus is modest, reflecting his youth and the fact that his life never truly began to unfold. It is a quiet testament to a silent sorrow, one of many similar small tombs within the sprawling crypt. However, upon the smooth, dark surface of Archduke Rudolph's tiny coffin rests an object that instantly grabbed your attention. An item so personal and out of place, it creates an immediate sense of poignant mystery. It is a single child's shoe, not a miniature decorative carving or an effigy, but an actual tangible shoe, small and worn, made of what appears to be soft leather, now aged and darkened by centuries of dust and time. It lies there seemingly just placed, as if someone has only just left it. It is not attached, not enshrined, not part of the coffin's original design. It is simply there, a lone, forgotten relic. The shoe looks fragile, perhaps a little misshapen from tiny footsteps that never fully formed. It suggests comfort, the simple freedom of a child's movement. Its presence is profoundly unsettling because it feels so intimately connected to the child within. Yet it is a detached object, left on the outside. Who placed it there? And why? It feels like a spontaneous act of grief, a direct, unfiltered expression of sorrow that bypasses the formality of imperial burial rituals. Was it left by his mother, Empress Eleanor Magdalene, a woman known for her deep piety and maternal devotion? Did she, in a moment of overwhelming sorrow, leave behind a tangible symbol of her lost child, perhaps one of the last items he wore, a last touch of his brief presence on earth? It is a deeply personal gesture, a raw, emotional echo in a place otherwise dedicated to grand public statements of power and lineage. The shoe, small and vulnerable, speaks volumes about the fragility of life, even royal life, and the enduring pain of a parent's loss. It is a silent whisper of a brief childhood, a tangible link to a life that ended too soon, left behind as a sorrowful yet beautiful memento in the eternal quiet of the crypt. Its very simplicity makes it one of the most haunting and peculiar items. A small worn shoe carrying the immense weight of unspoken love and sorrow, forever resting on a coffin that contains a life that never got the chance to walk. Number 3. The sarcophagus of Empress Maria Ludovica, with a carving of an unidentified exotic animal. The Habsburgs were a family of global reach, their influence extending far beyond the borders of Austria through strategic marriages and political alliances. Their crypt reflects this grand narrative with coffins, adorned with symbols of their vast domains. But one particular sarcophagus, that of Empress Maria Ludovica, presents a baffling detail that defies easy explanation. Maria Ludovica was born in 1787, a princess of Modena who became the third wife of Emperor Francis I, the last Holy Roman Emperor and first Emperor of Austria. Their marriage in 1808 was a political union amidst the tumultuous Napoleonic Wars, a time of immense upheaval for Europe and the Habsburg monarchy. Maria Ludovica was a woman of fierce intelligence and strong will, known for her sharp wit and her deep patriotism. She was a vocal opponent of Napoleon and a powerful influence at court, often clashing with her husband's more conciliatory foreign minister, Metternich. She was also a patron of the arts and sciences, intellectually curious and well-read, a formidable presence despite her frail health. Her life was a constant negotiation between her strong opinions and the demanding realities of imperial court life. During a period of existential threat, Her sarcophagus, a substantial lead and bronze structure typical of the early 19th century, is adorned with many classical and imperial motifs: eagles, crowns, and allegorical figures representing virtues like justice and wisdom. However, among these expected symbols etched prominently into the metalwork on one side of her coffin is a carving of an animal that simply does not belong. It is not a lion, a double-headed eagle, or any creature from European heraldry or traditional mythology. It is clearly a depiction of an exotic animal, one that looks distinctly African or Asian. It resembles something akin to a pangolin, or perhaps a fantastical interpretation of an armadillo, or an aardvark with a long snout, small eyes, and a body covered in overlapping scales or plates. It is a creature you would expect to find in a zoological illustration from a distant land, not carved onto the tomb of a European empress. The depiction is detailed enough to suggest the artist had seen such an animal, either in person or in a very accurate drawing rather than simply inventing it. Why would such an unusual and seemingly irrelevant animal be placed on her sarcophagus? Maria Ludovica was not known for any particular interest in exotic zoology, nor did she travel extensively to non-European lands. Was it a subtle, perhaps coded reference to a secret society or a hidden affiliation? Was it a symbol known only to a very select few, a private joke, or a deeply personal metaphor related to a facet of her character that was not publicly known? Perhaps it represented a challenge she overcame or a hidden strength she possessed. The image is an undeniable anomaly, a strange blip in the otherwise conventional iconography of Habsburg Imperial burial. It leaves you wondering about the private world of this powerful empress, the untold stories and hidden fascinations that might have shaped her life and her final resting place. This small, peculiar creature, silently etched into the metal whispers of a mystery that time has kept locked away, a curious footnote to a life lived on the grand stage of European history, yet harboring an unexpected exotic secret. Number 2. The small unmarked wooden box next to Emperor Joseph II's coffin. Emperor Joseph II, son of Maria Theresa, was one of the most intriguing and revolutionary figures in Habsburg history. Born in 1741, he was an enlightened despot, driven by a powerful desire to modernize and rationalize the sprawling empire. He ascended to sole rule after his mother's death in 1780, and embarked on an ambitious program of reforms known as Josephinism. He abolished serfdom, granted religious toleration to Protestants and Jews, dissolved hundreds of monasteries, introduced secular education, and even tried to simplify court protocol. He was a man of intense intellect, driven by reason and a deep commitment to the welfare of his subjects, even if his methods were often authoritarian and his reforms met with widespread resistance. He was known for his personal austerity, often dressing simply, despising pomp and ceremony, and working tirelessly. His reign was a whirlwind of activity, constant travel and relentless pursuit of efficiency. He died in 1790, a disillusioned man, feeling that he had achieved little despite his immense efforts. His sarcophagus in the Imperial Crypt is remarkably relatively plain compared to those of his predecessors. And even his mother, it is a large lead coffin, dignified but unadorned, reflecting his personal philosophy of simplicity and utility. A stark contrast to the Baroque extravagance of earlier Habsburg tombs. He famously detested the elaborate funeral rituals of his time, and his own burial was carried out with a minimum of fuss. But alongside his coffin, almost tucked away and easy to overlook amidst the grandeur of the crypt, lies an object that is both startlingly humble and utterly mysterious, a small, unassuming wooden box. It is roughly cubic in shape, perhaps the size of a shoebox, crafted from plain, unvarnished wood. There are no carvings, no inscriptions, no identifying marks whatsoever. It is simply a wooden box, sitting silently on the stone floor, an object of startling commonness in a crypt filled with immense wealth and artistic expression. Its very anonymity makes it profoundly strange. Why is it there? What could such a humble, unmarked container hold that warranted its placement beside the tomb of such a powerful reformist emperor? Joseph II was a man who embraced reason and rejected superstition. He was known for his meticulous record-keeping and his practical approach to everything. Did this box contain personal effects he wished to take with him into the afterlife, items too intimate or too utilitarian to be displayed on his grand tomb? Perhaps it held his spectacles, his pen, his favorite books, or even the numerous letters he exchanged with philosophers and intellectuals across Europe. Or was it something more symbolic, a repository of his unfulfilled dreams for the empire, a silent testament to the reforms he could not fully implement? Given his anti-clerical stance and his desire to break with tradition, the presence of such a simple, non-religious object feels like a final defiant statement against the very pomp he detested. It's an enigma that seems to embody his character perfectly, stripped down, functional, yet holding an unknown depth. The small, plain wooden box next to the emperor's grave whispers of a life lived for efficiency and reason, but perhaps also of a few closely held, unrevealed secrets, hidden in plain sight. An ultimate puzzle left behind by a man who tried to simplify everything, yet left behind one profound silent question. Number 1. The coffin of Archduchess Elizabeth Amalie, adorned with symbols of Masonic or secret society. Origin. The Habsburg Imperial Crypt is primarily a testament to the Catholic faith, with crosses, saints, and religious iconography adorning almost every sarcophagus. The dynasty was staunchly Catholic, often seen as the last bastion of the Holy Roman Empire and a bulwark against Protestantism, and later, secularism. So finding symbols that stray from this deeply ingrained tradition is exceedingly unusual, even shocking. One of the newer additions to the crypt, reflecting a later period in Habsburg history, belongs to Archduchess Elizabeth Amalie. Born in 1878, she was the daughter of Archduke Karl Ludwig and Princess Maria Theresia of Braganza. She married Prince Alois of Liechtenstein in 1903, thus becoming a Princess of Liechtenstein, though she was buried here as a Habsburg Archduchess upon her death in 1960. Her life spanned a period of immense change, from the Belle Epoque of the Austro-Hungarian Empire, through 2 world wars, and the complete collapse of the old European order. She was known as a woman of considerable intellect, strong opinions, and a progressive outlook, often described as more independent and less bound by strict court etiquette than many of her contemporaries. She had a keen interest in literature and philosophy, and was known to entertain intellectual circles which, at the time, could mean exposure to ideas beyond the traditional conservative court. Her sarcophagus, though not as elaborate as those from earlier centuries, is a substantial and finely crafted piece. It is made of bronze, with clean lines and a dignified appearance characteristic of early 20th century funerary art. However, etched into the bronze, almost subtly but undeniably present, are a series of symbols that are strikingly out of place for a Habsburg imperial tomb and for a devoutly Catholic context. Among the traditional crosses and family crests, one can discern clear, geometric patterns, interlocking triangles, a compass and square, and all-seeing eye and akery, a strong resembles Aberd Stromless. Induigets wantation. These are not symbols typically found within the rigid Catholic framework of the Habsburg monarchy. The presence of such imagery on her tomb raises profound questions. Was Archduchess Elizabeth Amalie a member of a Masonic lodge or perhaps affiliated with a secret society? Such affiliations, especially for a woman of her standing, would have been highly unusual and deeply controversial within the traditionally conservative Habsburg family and the Catholic Church. Or did these symbols represent a personal philosophical belief, a private intellectual journey that she embarked upon, perhaps finding solace or understanding in ideas that transcended conventional religious dogma. Maybe they were a subtle nod to her progressive leanings, a quiet declaration of her independent thought, or a testament to a circle of like-minded individuals with whom she shared intellectual camaraderie. The symbols are not overtly prominent, almost as if they were intended to be recognized by those who knew their meaning, while remaining ambiguous to the uninitiated. Her life spanned a period where new ideas and societal structures were emerging, and perhaps she was more receptive to these shifts than her ancestors. The appearance of these symbols on her final resting place is a powerful silent statement challenging the monolithic image of the Habsburgs as solely traditional and devout. It suggests a hidden life, a secret belief, or private affiliation that she carried with her into the crypt, a final, enigmatic message, etched in bronze, forever whispering of a deeper, perhaps rebellious, intellectual current. Within the heart of the seemingly unshakable imperial dynasty,